In the previous video, we discussed consciousness as the act of knowing. The experience of being the knowing subject, however, is only one half of the process of knowledge. The other half is the experience of being the known object. The ego as knower conquers the outer or inner other by relegating it to the status of known object. But this is not consciousness in the full sense of knowing wit. It is only science or simple knowing. To achieve authentic consciousness, the ego must also go through the experience of being the object of knowledge. That is, it must change its position from being a knowing subject to a known object and delegate the function of the knower to some other. To some extent, the experience of being the known object takes place in the course of psychotherapy. The therapist often carries the projection of the knowing other, causing the patient to feel reduced to the status of a known object. However, this transference-induced condition is partial and temporary. It is also dangerous since the patient is liable to get caught in a personal dependence on the human being who knows him. Dependence on the therapist becomes a substitute for dependence on the inner knowing one, that is, the self. In a letter written in 1915, Jung describes vividly the dangers to the patient of being known or understood by the analyst. Understanding is a fearfully binding power, at times a veritable murder of the soul as soon as it flattens out vitally important differences. The core of the individual is a mystery of life, which is snuffed out when it is grasped. The menacing and dangerous thing about analysis is that the individual is apparently understood. The devil eats his soul away, which naked and exposed, robbed of its protecting shell, was born like a child into the light, that is the dragon, the murderer, that always threatens the newborn divine child. He must be hidden once more from the understanding of humanity. As Jung indicates in other sections of the same letter, the therapist's understanding of the patient is necessary for neurotic aspects of the personality. However, it should not be applied to the healthy psyche. Thus, the full experience of being the known object of an other knowing subject is best not projected onto a person, but rather experienced as an encounter with the inner God image, the self. The archetypal image that carries the clearest symbolic expression of the ego's experience of being the known object is the image of the eye of God. This image played a large role in Egyptian mythology. According to Randall Clark, the eye of the high god is the great goddess of the universe in her terrible aspect. Originally, it had been sent out into the primeval waters by God on an errand to bring back Shu and Tefnut to their father. Thus, the eye is the daughter of the high god. When it returned, it found that it had been supplanted in the great one's face by another, a surrogate eye, which we can interpret as the sun or moon. This was the primary cause for the wrath of the eye and the great turning point in the development of the universe, for the eye can never be fully or permanently appeased. The high god turned it into a rearing cobra, which he bound around his forehead to ward off his enemies. In the dreams of a middle-aged woman, there is an interesting parallel to the mythological equation of eye is equal to snake. This patient was suffering from a chronic, painful physical illness and was also suffering psychologically in the effort to understand the meaning of her ordeal. She had this dream: I am talking with friends. Something we talked about caused snakes to start crawling about the room. It was as though they had been inanimate objects on the wall that had been brought to life by something I said. I wanted to kill them, but a friend said I shouldn't. The next dream, a few days later, was this. I went to the kitchen sink to clean it up. It was actually just wet. As I looked at it, the drops of water separated. Each drop had a center in it, like fish eggs or eyes. I did not throw them away. This woman tended to take the attitude of passive victim. These dreams occurred when she was starting to experience rebellious reactions against the victim role. The dreams indicate that paying attention to the unconscious or talking about it brought the snakes to life. Later, the snakes turned into fishes' eggs or eyes. This movement is the reversal of the Egyptian myth in which the eye of God is turned into a rearing serpent. The idea would seem to be that the emerging instinctual reactions of protest, that is the snakes, are actually autonomous centers of consciousness, fishes' eyes, and hence are subject to the ego's object. In other words, the dreamer was beginning to experience herself as the object of another subject. That other subject, or the self, will not tolerate the meek passivity of the victim role, and by noting the reactions of inner protest, the woman discovered the objective subject within, that is, the self. This image of an eye is discussed by Jung in his essay on the nature of the psyche, where the multiple eye motif is equated with multiple luminosities. To be watched by strange fishy eyes gives one the uncanny sense of other presences. The fish's eyes correspond to the multiple eye of God as described in Zechariah. These 7 are the eyes of the Lord, which reigns through the whole earth. The major effect of such an experience is the realization that one is not alone in the psyche. In another Egyptian text, the eye of God says of itself, "I am the all-seeing eye of Horus, whose appearance strikes terror, Lady of slaughter, mighty one of frightfulness." The experience of being a known object, being seen by the eye of God, can be a fearsome experience, because unconscious contents as a rule cannot stand to be observed. They react violently to being known because this destroys or relativizes the autonomy or omnipotence they enjoy while operating unconsciously. These unconscious contents or complexes are various aspects of ego self-identity, which is profoundly threatened by being subordinated to the status of an object known to the transcendental subject.